Hey guys, welcome to the C++ series. Now before we start going into details of C++ and how it works, let's first make sure that we have the right tools installed to write our C++ programs. For writing and building C++ code, you'll need a C++ compiler and a text editor. But installing and setting up a compiler and text editor for coding in C++ becomes tricky at times. So to make our lives easier, I'll be using an IDE, which stands for Integrated Development Environment. Basically, an IDE is just a text editor and compiler packaged into a single application. It also has some additional tools to make coding easier and faster, and we will be definitely using some of those tools. But for now, just keep in mind that IDE includes a text editor and a compiler. If you don't know what a compiler is, don't worry. I'll be covering that in some future videos. But for now, I just want to make sure that we are able to run a simple C++ program without getting into much details. So for now, let's see how to install an IDE. And for this, we have multiple options to choose from. You can go for Visual Studio, which is probably the most famous IDE for C++ and is widely used in industry. At the time of recording this video, Visual Studio 2019 is the latest version available, but it might be different if you are watching this video in future. So Visual Studio comes in 3 flavors: Community, Professional and Enterprise. Out of these 3, only Community version is free to use. The other 2 are paid and you will probably never need them anyways. The second IDE option that we have is Code Blocks. This is a really nice and easy to use IDE for beginners. And the best part is, it is open source, free and cross-platform. Open source means you can freely access the source code of this IDE and modify it if you want. And cross-platform means it works exactly the same on Windows, Linux and Mac. Then the third option that we have is CodeLite, and similar to Code Blocks, CodeLite is also free, open source and cross-platform. And then we have Visual Studio Code, or popularly known as VS Code. Now this is not exactly an IDE, in fact VS Code is just a text editor, but with some additional work it is possible to convert it into a pretty usable IDE. VS Code is also free, cross-platform and open source. But keep in mind that Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code are 2 different applications. Now since this series is targeted for beginners, I'll be going with Code Blocks, mainly because it is the most easy one to set up. But maybe in some future video I'll show how to set up some of the other IDEs too. I have put the links to all these IDEs/editors in the description of this video. So let's close all the other tabs that we don't require. Now to download Code Blocks, let's go to the download section. Here you'll see options to download the source code and binary release of Code Blocks. We don't want the source code, so let's click on download the binary release. Now on this page you can see that Code Blocks is supported on Windows, Linux and Mac. So first I'll show the steps for Windows and then I'll show steps for Linux. I don't have access to a Mac machine, so if you are on Mac, try searching on the internet about the Mac setup. So if you scroll down a little, you can see that under Windows section we have so many options. But don't worry, you only need to install one of them. Now to choose which one you'll have to download, you'll have to check what is the architecture of your system. You can see that some of these downloads have 32-bit in their name. This indicates that they are meant for a 32-bit operating system, and the ones which don't have 32-bit in their name are for 64-bit OS. If you don't know the architecture of your OS, you can easily check that by opening a command prompt and typing in this command: wmic os get OS architecture, and then hit enter. As you can see, it prints 64-bit on my machine. If you get 32-bit here, you'll have to download one of the 32-bit versions of Code Block. Since mine is 64-bit, I'll have to choose one from the top 5 ones. Now out of these 5, first 3 are just basic Code Block setup without the compiler, and the next 2 with MingGW come with an included compiler. If you read the note at bottom, it says that ones with MingGW come with some additional compilers, and as we need a compiler too, we'll have to select one of these. Now you will notice that some of these have .exe extension and some have .zip extension. And the difference between them is that the ones with .exe are installers which will install code blocks on your system. This means it will copy code blocks file at some of the standard locations, and code blocks will show up in the control panel under add or remove programs. On the other hand, the ones with .zip extension are standalone packages. That means you can basically extract the contents of these zip files and run code blocks from the extracted folder. You don't have to install anything. Now, I'm not a huge fan of installing programs on my system, so I'll choose the .zip version. And to download this, you'll have to click on the FOSSHub link. Once you click this, it will take you to FOSSHub site and download will start. I'm gonna stop this download because I have already downloaded this zip file, but you'll have to wait till it completes. So if I open my downloads folder, you can see that it has that zip file. Now to extract this, I'll first go to a folder called dev located under my C drive. Basically, you can choose any location for this. Personally, I like to keep all my coding related stuff under this dev directory. And then I'll copy the downloaded zip in this dev folder. Now let's close all the other windows. Now to extract this zip file, you can right click on it to select extract all option. Once you click that, a window will open up asking you the destination directory. By default, it will pick the current folder, which is what we want. And then you can click extract. Now I'm not going to do that because this option works a little slow and I have a better extraction tool. But you'll have to click extract and wait till it completes. So I'll cancel this and then I'll select 7-zip tool for extraction. And as you can see, a new folder with same name as the zip file is created here. So once the extraction completes, you can delete the zip file. Now if you go inside this new folder, you'll find many files. And one of them will be named codeblocks.exe. This is the main executable file which will launch code blocks. Now to make this easily accessible, I'll right click on this and select Pin to Start. What this does is, it adds a shortcut to your start menu, like this. So you can use this option to open code blocks without having to go into this extracted folder every time. Let's click on this to open up code blocks. On the very first launch, you will get this compiler detection window. Basically, code blocks tries to search for all the compilers that might be already installed on your system. And right now, code blocks has detected this GNU GCC compiler. If you don't see any compiler here, that means you have downloaded a version of code blocks which does not come with any compiler. So you'll probably have to re-download the correct version. So I'll click this set as default button and then I'll click OK. Next, you'll get this window which asks if you want to associate all the C++ related files to code blocks. I'll leave this to first option and click OK. In case you have already installed code blocks before, you won't get these two windows, and finally you'll get to the actual code blocks application. Okay, so now let's quickly take a look at how to install code blocks on a Linux machine. As you can see, I'm right now on Elementary OS, which is a Linux distribution based on Ubuntu. So to install code blocks, you'll first have to open up a terminal. Once the terminal is open, first thing to do is run sudo apt update. This will make sure that your package manager pulls packages from the latest version. Depending on your distribution, this command might be different, but for all distributions derived from Debian, this should be same. After apt update completes, type in sudo apt install code blocks and hit enter. This will list down all the required packages for code blocks along with the total download size. So type in Y and press enter to continue. This will start the installation. Once that is done, you will have code blocks installed and you will find it in the applications list. But before we launch this, we will have to install one more thing, and that is a C++ compiler. You can first check if you already have one by running g++ command. And as you can see, it says command g++ not found. So to install g++ compiler, type in sudo apt install g++. And again type Y and hit enter to continue. Once this installation completes, you can close this terminal and then launch code blocks. And here you will get the compiler detection window. Just click OK here. And this will take you to the main code blocks window, similar to the one we saw on Windows. Since code blocks work same on all platforms, I'll switch back to Windows, but you should be able to follow along without any issues. So there are so many things to cover here, but we will take a look at them as and when required. For now, just click on this create a new project link. This will open up this window. Since code block supports multiple languages, we will have so many project templates to choose from, but we will mostly be working on simple console applications. So I'll open this drop down and select console category. This will filter out some of the options, and from the remaining ones, just choose the first one which says console application and click go. Next, code blocks will ask which language you want to use. For us, this will be C++, so select that and click next. Now we will have to specify a title for this project. For this demo, I'll name this project as My First Program. Then the second field will ask for a location where this project will be created. For you, this field might be empty. You can click on the button at the end of this field to browse to a specific location. I'll go to the same dev folder and create a new folder called projects. And then I'll click on select this folder. And once you are happy with all the values, you can click next. On this window, code blocks will allow you to select the compiler and build configurations. Don't make any changes on this page, leave it as it is and click finish. And once you do that, your project will be ready for use. You can see that a project named My First Program is created under the project panel on the left. Under this project, you can see a folder called source. And if you expand that, you will see a file called main.cpp. If you double click on main.cpp, it will open up in the middle section. I'll zoom a little here so that you can see it clearly. So code blocks creates this file for us with some dummy code. Right now we don't have to know what this code means. We just have to test if we are able to run it. So to run this code, you can either click on this run and build button, or you can go under the build tab located at the top and select build and run. So if you select that, code blocks will build this code and then will run it. And if everything was successful, you should see a command prompt or a terminal which displays hello world. You can ignore these two lines as they are not part of our code. It gets printed by code blocks and is not exactly part of our program. You can see that this hello world comes from this line. I'll quickly go and edit this line and replace world with friend. And then I'll again build and run this code. And now you can see that the output in the console says hello friend. So if you are able to do this, it means your code blocks is installed and working correctly. And you can follow along with the rest of this series. If for some reason this is not working for you, you can post your questions in the comment section below, or you can join the Telegram group linked in the description. So this was it for now. I hope you were able to follow along. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more such videos.